Hey everybody, it's Kat Tesla, and in this video we're going to talk about how to introduce your work and establish relationships with art consulting firms. So first of all, let's start with defining what is an art consultant. So an art consultant essentially places art. They are the go-between between artists and the private or public sector. So art consultants tend to specialize in one of these areas: corporate, hospitality, medical, public art, cruise ships or yachts or aircraft, gardens or residential projects. And some of the art consultants operate as an individual or as a firm, and they might actually specialize in more than one area. So art consultants advise their clients, they research and they commission art, and they also usually will oversee the installation of the artwork. There really aren't specific qualifications to be an art consultant or an advisor, but they are an expert in their field. Most of them will hold some type of degree in art, either a master's degree in fine art, art history, or some type of related subject. And a lot of them had years of experience in the art industry. Maybe they were working for a gallery or they worked for another art consultant. And essentially that expertise led them to kind of do their own thing, either as an art consultant or joining a firm. In recent years, there is now a certification called the International Association of Professional Art Advisors certification. So there are some certifications coming to light for people who call themselves art consultants. So if you see a bunch of letters after somebody's name, like IAPAA, that's what it stands for. So how do they work? Art consultants are only about the art. They are not interior designers, but they often work with interior designers. So these are kind of the steps that art consulting firms typically go through. They first consult the client. They want to understand the client's vision, and they want to determine, the theme for the artwork, what the person wants inside of the building or outside of the building or both. And they want to really extensively research the context for the art. So a lot of times a corporation or a healthcare facility will say, well, we're all about environmentalism. And so we want art that reflects our values. And we also want it to include our corporate logo colors. And we also, so they start kind of putting together this list of requirements. The other thing the art consultant does is they start figuring out, where do they need art? And they propose that to the client, because the client, nobody's talking about money yet. Typically what happens is the client consults with an art consulting firm or an art consultant and says, oh, we need art. We don't know where to begin. This is what we're about. This is the look we're going for. And then the art consulting firm says, okay, you're going to need like a big painting by the elevator. You're going to need smaller work in the hallway here, or, whatever. And so then they create something called an artwork strategy, which is a very detailed proposal for the art, and including some concepts for custom art commissions. And so I'm going to talk about later in this presentation about how you may be approached by an art consulting firm and they want you to put together a concept or a sketch for them. And this is why, because they're trying to sell an artwork strategy. And often art consulting firms bid against one another. So a corporation or a medical center or a new hotel line will put out a bid for proposal, and then art consulting firms respond to that. And so they're all putting together different presentations, and then the client, whether it's a medical center or like the Hyatt Regency or a golf club or whatever it is, they'll kind of pick between the people who put in a proposal and decide which firm they're going to work with. So the art consulting firm, once they have developed an artwork strategy and it's accepted by their client, then they will collaborate with artists on commissions tailored for that project. And they will also oversee the entire project. So all the aspects of delivering the art collection, managing the commissions, getting them all shipped. I've worked on many of these, and they're often huge projects where they are sourcing like 700 works of art, not all original, but oftentimes just they have so many artists they're working with across the country, and you're only one little cog in the wheel. So you might be doing one painting or four paintings for one floor that is, 8,000 square feet. And so you're only like one little corridor. They've got the rest that they're filling up with other things. So you are just one piece of the pie when it comes to a project that an art consultant that is doing. Then once all of the art is completed, the art consulting firm will handle the installation, the presentation, the framing, if there's any kind of lighting that needs to happen. And this is why a lot of art consulting firms do their own in-house framing and their in-house printing for giclée prints on canvas or paper. So where do you find an art consulting firm? Like, how do you find these people? Well, you can actually Google around and you'll be able to find a ton of art consulting firms. There is one website in particular called art-collecting.com, and they list firms around the country in the US by state. And so you'll be able to see who is listed there. I would say that that's not a comprehensive list. There are others. And for those of us who remember the Yellow Pages, which was a hard copy book of all businesses and their phone numbers, etc., you can now find the Yellow Pages online digitally. And art consulting firms are listed under art/art dealers/art galleries. They're kind of bunched in with those other entities. So those are just some ideas. And art magazines in your state will often list local art consultants. So I know there's a magazine in Miami that I've picked up before where it had a whole section in the back that was titled Art Consultants, Art Advisors, Art Brokers, and Private Dealers. Now, I want to say that an art advisor is not the same as an art consultant. An art advisor more so advises like a corporate client. Like they might say, you need to get a Cy Twombly in your collection, or you need to let's get a price on. So they're looking at advising for a well-rounded collection. It's a different thing than an art consulting firm. So you want to make sure when you're searching, you're looking for art consultants, not advisors. So your first step, if you want to go this route, is to find firms or individual art consultants. I would start in your state, and you want to find out if you're a good fit for them. And you might not be sure if your work is the kind of work they'd be looking for. So they often will have an artist submission button or a contact form to fill out on their website. And if they don't, you can send them an email. So first, I would take a good hard look at your work. Is your work the kind of work that you could see in the lobby of a hotel? Is it nature-based, and would it be great in a hospital or a medical center? So is it dimensional? Could it be hanging from the ceiling of a lobby? And so you kind of want to do some homework to figure out, look at the projects they do and the type of work that is in their projects. So every art consulting firm usually has actually a fabulous website, and they have all their projects listed because they're trying to lure new clients in by showing, hey, look at what we've done. So you can kind of take a look and see the type of art that they've specified previously. You want to send, like, let's say you find 10 art consulting firms that you think your work might fit with. You want to send a personal email to each of those 10 firms. You don't want to do one e-blast. You want to do an email separately to each of those 10. And what you do in that email is you introduce yourself, and you could attach a small PDF catalog of your work. I would say just like 8 to 10 images, and include retail pricing, the sizes you work in, the mediums, and the titles of your work. You really don't need your artist statement or your resume or your CV, because all they want to see is your art. Is this something that matches a project that they're working on? They don't really care if you've been working for 1 year in the industry or 50 years in the industry. They're trying to make a match of artwork to their projects. So in the email, you can ask them, are you working on any projects? You're wondering if your work would be a good fit. So I'm just going to, off the top of my head, give you a sample email. You could say, dear Mr. Brown, my name is Kat Tesla. I am a painter based in the Sarasota, Florida area. I've attached a PDF catalog of a sample of the type of nature-based abstract paintings that I create, including my pricing and details. I'm wondering if you're working on any projects at present or in the future where my artwork could be a fit for your projects. I look forward to hearing back. You just want it very short and sweet. You're just kind of saying, here's who I am, here's where I'm located, here's what I do. Could we go out on a date? That's essentially what you're asking. Could we work together? Could we possibly match up? And, in some cases, they won't open a PDF. They won't open an attachment because they're afraid of opening some kind of spam thing. But most often, more often than not, they will open your PDF. If not, you could say, if you prefer that I send a few single images or a link to my website, please let me know. And a lot of times they'll just go to your website, and they'll just do a quick look around, and you may not hear from them ever again, or you may hear from them, immediately. So they're always busy, and it doesn't mean anything negative if you don't hear anything right away. So, the next thing that they'll do, if they do like your work, is they're going to ask, what is your artist net? And you might think, well, what the heck is artist net? So the artist net price is the price you will accept for your work. So most art consulting firms work very similarly to a gallery. They take 50%. Some accept 40%, where the artist would be paid 60%. But they don't tell you how they work. They want you to tell them your net. So you could respond back and say, my artist net is 50% of the retail price. And then I would always put in an example just to make sure Everybody's on the same page. So I would say this means if the retail price of one of my paintings is $2,000, then the artist net is $1,000. The other thing you need to say is if shipping is extra or if it's included. So what I usually say is, after saying the artist net, then I say shipping is additional based on girth and weight. They get that. And then you might want to include what substrates you can paint on. And what I mean by that is, do you work on paper, canvas, wood, metal? Because a lot of art consulting firms want things that are a little bit more sturdy. So I have done many, many, many commissions on birch wood supports that I have custom made, often by a local framer or another artist. So they might respond and say, I love your work, but don't have anything right now where it would fit. Then I always ask permission. I'll just send a quick email back and say, thanks very much. If it's okay with you, I'll touch base again in about 6 months. And then they'll usually respond, great, thanks, because they're busy. And so you don't necessarily get long drawn out emails. It's very short responses. But then what I do is I mark my calendar. I put it on my calendar a little bit shy of 6 months. So usually around 5.5 months later, I'll reach back out and say hi, and I'll respond to that same email so that it'll refresh their memory about the email thread we previously had. So I'll hit reply all, and I'll change the subject to touching base again. And then I'll say, hi, Mr. Brown, it's Kat Tesla. We emailed earlier this year. I'm sending you a PDF of new work, and I'm just checking in to see if there's a project where my work could fit. And that's all. And they might not respond. That it could be over then, or they might respond in 6 months or a year, because sometimes they're just too busy. And most of the time, art consulting firms don't outright buy what's in your studio. However, they often, at the end of a calendar year, they will have to spend the rest of a budget, which helps them tax-wise. So if they're a corporation, C corporations, you don't want any money left at the end of a calendar year. So they might be working on a project for another C corporation, and they want to spend that money and get rid of it before the end of the year. Otherwise, they might be taxed on it. So long story short, they may buy something outright in your studio in December, but I can tell you it's never otherwise happened. I sold a very large painting. Large for me, it was like 65 by 78. It was like early December, and I was emailed right around Thanksgiving by an art consultant I had worked with. Gosh, it must have been 10 years prior. I was shocked to hear from her. And she just messaged and said, do you still have this in your studio? And I said, yes. And she wrote back and said, can you hold it for 2 weeks? And I said, yeah. And then she wrote back 2 weeks later and she said, we want it for this project. What's the soonest you can ship it? I need it before December 31st. And so that kind of thing can happen. It's not super common, but it does occur. So the more typical thing that does happen is that you are commissioned and they want to know your lead time, meaning, how much time do you need to do the painting for them, the sizes you work in, and whether your work is varnished, is it on wood, is it on canvas, etc. So this is typically what happens. So once you start working with firms, I get these all the time and they kind of make me panic, but they'll say this, dear Kat, we have confirmed that our client wants your blank painting on birch wood, and they'll attach an image of my painting in blank size. The image needs to carry around the edge. Please deliver sketches for approval by blank date. The PO is blank. Please send an invoice for the deposit and let us know when you can ship. Can you include security hardware? Thanks. So let me decipher what this means. So essentially, they will initially say, hey, Kat, I'm going to propose a couple of your paintings for a client. That might happen in January. And then you say, okay. And then you hear nothing and you forget about it. And then in August or October, you get this kind of an email that says, they want that painting we proposed in January, and they want it in a different size on a different substrate, and you have to carry the image around the edge, and they need sketches in 2 weeks. It's often very, very short for sketches. And then they will give you a PO number, which is a purchase order number. And when you invoice them, you have to put that purchase order number on your invoice. And so they will pay you a deposit of 50% immediately. When you get this email, if you send the invoice back the same day, I have gotten a deposit like 2 days later, in the mail or digitally. So the other thing they'll sometimes ask for is if you'll include security hardware. And years ago, when I was doing a series on birch boxes, for a couple of clients, my husband and I put on the security hardware. Security hardware is like a French cleat, where, if you're in a hotel and they have giclées on the wall and different prints, if you pull on that giclée, you can't get it off. And that's because there's security hardware that makes it very hard for somebody to steal off the wall. And so that's what they're asking about. Now, we did this, I think, for like a 3-year period, and then we decided that we were not going to do it any longer because it was a pain in the butt. And so I always say, I don't have security hardware and I'm not able to handle that piece of the puzzle for you. I just say, I don't do security hardware. If you want a wire on the back, I can do that. And that's it. And so then they often will respond and say, don't wire it because we're going to put security hardware on it. So I would say this is the kind of correspondence you need to know how to answer before you get it. And I would also strongly recommend that don't ever promise what you can't deliver. And you want clarification. So if you get this kind of an email and you have no idea what's going on, or you don't even remember any kind of email previously about them considering your work, then you might want to respond and say, hi, I just got your email and I'm very excited that my work was selected. But I do have some questions. When is a good time for me to call you? And I would call them and say, here's what I can do. Here's what I can't do. You really want to be honest. You want to tell them your capabilities. And if there's something you can't do, then don't say you can do it, because you will be really in a pickle. Art consultants are human beings. They're just like us. Being professional and courteous usually works great. And I'll give you an example. So I got this exact email sometime this year, and I was very busy with shows and other commissions. And what I did was I picked up the phone and I called the art consultant and I said, look, I cannot do sketches. It's impossible unless you can give me like 2 more days in a week. I am completely saturated. It's completely impossible for me to do the sketches, but I know I can do the painting in the size that you want. I can do it on birch wood and I can meet your deadline. And, you know, would that work for you? And they'll usually say, well, let me talk to the client because the client wanted sketches. And I said, well, it's not a possibility. So if that's a deal breaker, it's a deal breaker. I said, I would love to do the commission for you, but I'm not going to be able to fit in the sketches. And I'd really like to just get the birch wood support made and get to work and make this happen for you. And so then usually I will hear from the art consultant a few days later, and they'll let me know yes or no if that's okay. And it's typically okay. In one instance, they insisted on sketches. And, I had to like lose sleep essentially to fit it into my schedule. So, but that's kind of how it works. But, the art consultants are really trying to work with, they're the go-betweens. They're trying to please their client and they have a vision for how they want it to come out. And the designer might be saying, I can't have this one color in, so let's say I did a painting and it had red in it. And for a hospital, they never want red because it looks like blood. And so they don't want anything red in a medical center. And so if I've done a painting that they love, but it has even a dot of red, the first thing they'll tell me is the commission cannot have red paint. And I'll say, okay, so these are, just little things that you have to be able to work with and be okay with in order to work with art consulting firms. So here are some other things that they may ask you. They may say, do you do prints of your work? And so I was asked by a firm in Miami recently about, they're working on a couple of hotels and they wanted to use a couple of my abstract paintings as prints in all of the hotel rooms. And I don't know if I got this project yet, but I wanted to know, well, what would I be paid? And is it only for this project? Because I'm not somebody who's making prints right now. So I want to know what they're going to do with this high-res image that I give them. And so they assured me that it would only be for that project. And I said, okay, but I don't know yet if if my work was selected. They might ask if you will frame something for them. I advise that you not handle any framing. This is because framing can get damaged in the shipment. The color of the frame might differ than what they're expecting. And I think that that's really the part of the art consulting firm. So I advise against framing. They will sometimes want you to ship it unstretched, meaning you're painting on canvas, but they want the edges painted like a solid color. That's very hard to do. So in other words, think about cutting a piece of canvas, putting it on a wall, painting it, and then exactly measuring and taping off where you would paint what will become the canvas edge a solid color. I had to do that last year on a 10-foot wide painting. My husband and I measured and measured and taped because we were so worried that it wouldn't be perfect. It would have been better for us to stretch the canvas first and then ship it. But shipping a 10-foot long canvas was way out of their budget. And so they wanted me to do the work, and they said, can you make this happen? And I said, well, we'll try. We'll, do what we can. And it all worked out, but it was a nightmare. And I don't think I would do that again. So the other thing that might happen is an art consulting firm might have a small budget, and they may say, let's say they contact you about a $5,000 painting on your website, and they say, we want you to do a commission based on this painting in the same size without red. But we can only pay you $3,500. Or, the budget is let's say your artist net is $2,500, but they can only pay you $1,500. Then you have to decide, are you going to take like a giant cut in the pricing of your work to do this commission? And I typically say no. There is one instance when I was first starting out with art consulting firms that I said yes, because I wanted very much to do the commission, but I would not do it again. You don't want to diminish your pricing just to get chosen for the project, because once you do it once, that art consulting firm will try to push you to do it again. Another thing that you might be asked to do, they may say, these 3 paintings you did in 2018, we like all 3. Can you combine them into one single new painting? And, so then you have to ask a lot of questions to find out, well, which pieces of each of these 3 paintings did they like? I've had to do this before, and it's tricky, but kind of fun, because, it's like a big experiment. And I did it for a very large hospital commission. It was 3 like 6 by 7 foot paintings. I had to combine imagery from 2 of my past paintings together. And so I had to, really ask, well, is it like, what do you like about each one? And then I went quadrant by quadrant of each painting and asked them, okay, let's look at the top left of painting A. Is that what you like? Yes or no? And I just try to get as specific as possible so that I knew when I was painting what they liked and what they were looking for, because it was really kind of hard to pin down, especially from 2 abstract paintings. They often will want progress images every couple of weeks, especially if you're doing something big or if you're working on multiple paintings. They might want to visit your studio to see the progress in real life. And they might send a representative, or they might come themselves. And the other thing is, you will get your deposit immediately, but your balance, the other 50% of what you're owed, you typically don't get paid until they're paid. So this might all sound overwhelming and kind of crazy, like, why would you work with an art consulting firm? So I want to tell you why. Art consulting firms far outnumber the galleries that exist on the planet. And art consulting firms pay promptly. You get the deposit, like I said, immediately. And it's very businesslike. You are doing a project, you are finishing the project, you are shipping the project. I've done, I started doing these when a scout found me, an art consulting firm found me at an art festival. This was like in, I don't know, 2003. And I did a project, and it went very well. it was with a lot of small paintings. And so for me, it was easy to do because the paintings were small. It was like a group of smalls. And then I did another one. I did a bunch of groups of smalls. Then I kind of worked my way up to larger paintings and then, multiple larger paintings. And, it just kind of, kept growing. So once you work with one art consulting firm, somehow another art consulting firm will find you because they will see the work of the first firm. So it can be very lucrative. It is money in the bank for certain. Once they like your work and they start using you, it can be very consistent income and very lucrative. The key is that you might need to stretch yourself in a new direction, either size wise or working on a different type of substrate. And finally, when you get going on these types of projects, what I always do is I would have, taped to my bulletin board or my wall, a list of, the deposits I received and the balances that were due. And, I would have all the dates. So, when I got the second payment, I could check it off on my list. And I had to, you have to keep track of this because sometimes what happens is you do the commission, you send it, you hurry up and you finish it. It turns out great and they love it. And then there's a construction delay and you're waiting for your money and you're waiting for your money and you're thinking, oh my God, it's been 60 days. And so I always, I just email the firm and say, hey, I don't believe I've received my balance. I have no record of it. Can you, maybe I misunderstood. Can you update me on the status? And they will write back very quickly and say, oh, well, the construction's been delayed. We haven't been paid yet. When we're paid, you'll be paid and we'll keep you posted. And so that way, that they didn't forget about you or it wasn't lost in the mail or anything like that. So similarly to working with a gallery, art consulting firms are fabulous for selling a lot of your work, dependable income, and it's just something you have to stay on top of, just like you would working with more than one gallery.